What's up, my people? Welcome to Fellowship Bible Church's Sermon Spotlight, where we are coming at you each and every week with a fresh service to debrief in an effort to send biblical truth. And what better way to do that than by the power of conversation? I'm Caleb Pearson. To my far right, Ashton Burzio. Ashton,
hey,
how you doing, buddy? Repping the Redskins mug.
Yeah,
it's
waiting
been
to pull this out.
It's been quite some time. Still holds coffee just like all the other ones. That's great. Joining us again this week, Senior Pastor Mark Carey. Mark.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, man. Are you excited?
For what?
Thanksgiving and the holiday season. I feel like it's a nonstop thrill ride for the next month. You know what I mean?
You'll get older one day and you'll realize that. No. Good. I don't want to squash that.
Well, I want to explain
away
that
there, buddy.
a little bit more at the end. But before we do that, I wanted to ask both of you, and we actually asked our congregation through the Fellowship Family Facebook page, what is your favorite Thanksgiving side dish and why? And the why is very important, okay? You know what I mean? I'm not just after the what, but the why. I think that's important. Yeah. Does anyone care to go first?
That would be my wife, Lisa.
Okay, right.
And why? Because she makes all the side dishes come alive.
Okay, well, I guess the best answer was first. Ashton, go ahead.
Might as well just not even answer.
No, go ahead.
We
go
can't
ahead. Do the mundane.
I was going to steal his answer, but now I definitely can't. So
You were going to say Lisa? Mine is absolutely stuffing.
Okay.
Classic stuffing.
Oh, it's so good.
My dad used to make, there's an old Burzio stuffing recipe that we would make in this tub of, like a cooler, which had a bunch of loaves of bread and cornbread and sausage and onions and
That's cool.
all the good stuff, and just a lot of memories of that. And I've taken on that mantle.
So you're going to do that?
Yeah. Maybe not this year. It's a bit of an undertaking.
In theory.
Yeah. But stuffing balls, bacon, gravy, cranberry sauce. Wow. Oh, it's awesome.
That's good. Yeah. I'm a sweet potato kind of guy.
Yeah.
And it's funny. Everybody's tied right now, 18 votes each for sweet potato.
Well, the correct answer is stuffing.
The stuffing. And that was the first thing I put in there.
I have to agree.
But we'll see. So, feel free to go over to our Facebook page and engage with that.
Yeah, that's just a great place, that group. Just a little plug right there for that group.
Yeah.
That's a place where we created that, our main Facebook page is great for encouragement and for posts and things, but that family group is a private group for just people of Fellowship Bible Church, and it's really a place that we want you to feel comfortable to share prayer requests, praises. There's been some really encouraging posts in there about what people are learning, some of the things that are happening at FBC behind the scenes. So encourage you to go, if you have a Facebook account, just go to our main Facebook page and click on groups and request to join there. Yeah.
And will that stuffing recipe be on there at some point?
I think that's a Burzio secret.
Oh, okay. Ooh, aren't we important?
Awesome. All right, well, let's jump right in then to our Sunday in review, continuing with this Living Word series that we've been talking about. Mark, you were kind of talking out of Mark chapter 8, using the first 10 verses there. And so I wanted to kind of start out this morning just by asking you if there's anything you wanted to elaborate on or kind of hone in on as far as our time together this morning.
Wow, there is a lot. By the way, I did want to give a shout out to Brian, an FBCer who emailed and made this comment. I thought it was really good. He said, I couldn't help but think of the disciples' question in Mark 8:4, how can one feed the people with bread here in this desolate place? And Brian writes, what stands out to me is the depth of this question that the disciples don't realize. They're literally asking this question to the bread of life who came to a desolate place to save. And then he said, it made me think also of young Isaac when he innocently asked Abraham, where is the lamb for the burnt offering? We ask questions, how are we going to get out of this mess or whatever? And right in front of us is the one who can solve those issues. So I appreciate Brian making that comment. But I if you notice in that passage, they focused on the one loaf, and they're fixated on that one loaf. They're discussing, it says in verse 16, that there was this only one loaf issue of life. They were kind of one loaf livers. They were living in a one loaf world. Notice that Jesus never supplied anything beyond that. The story goes on, and they're stuck with their one loaf. And I think I think another takeaway, and I didn't develop this in the sermon, but I think it's worth at least considering. We live in a very entitled world. Mm. We bring that into our Christian life, whether it's a health, wealth, prosperity type mindset. Larry Crabb in one of his books calls it we live by the law of linearity. If I do A and B and C, I'll get D. Yep. And we live our Christian life that way. So we bring it's pervasive. I'm going to do this right, and I'll get this.
Well, it's the American dream, the American way.
Yes.
Our whole culture is based on that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Jesus left them with the one loaf.
Right.
He could have said, "Oh, hey guys, and there was another loaf for every one of them." And maybe that's what they wanted. Yeah. He left them with the single loaf. And I think a lot of times in our life, we are pursuing happiness. If we get this, we're going to be fulfilled. And our focus is still on that, and it's not on Him. And God allows us to live with that single loaf of emptiness sometimes, because I think He's trying to get us to realize that's not what life is about. It's not about the loaf. It's about Him.
Well, and that's not what true joy is either. I mean, we've been doing a Fruit of the Spirit talk with Keystone Young Adults, and one thing that one of the girls brought up was the difference between joy and happiness, and finding your joy in Christ no matter how happy life is or what has been given to you. It's all about that perspective, I think, of, okay, this is going to be my true source of joy. And one thing you talked about, Mark, that I liked, I was at the FSAT service. You honed in on optimism. And one thing you said was reacting when you wake up to "Good Lord, it's morning" or "Good morning, Lord." I thought that was a cool way of remembering. Okay, how am I starting my mornings, and how does that change, my outlook? As so many things happen to me that are out of my control, I need to remember that they are in Christ is in control. And if I'm freaking out over something as if nobody's in control, it's just not true biblically. So that was kind of one thing that really stood out to me. Ashton, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like these last two sermons I feel like have been really refreshing, of just to focus on Christ. There's something, all the ones leading up to this have been great, but there's something really incredible about just sitting in some of these gospel stories, and almost the same, very similar story between these last two sermons, as far as the situation and what Jesus did to remedy it, and the disciples' response. But I think it's something that we just need to hear and continue to be reminded of, because we do get stuck and focused on our situation, on our loaf. We get selfish. We get entitled. All of the things we've already talked about, but seeing how Christ responded to that situation, and I loved just bringing out this idea of His compassion, of his empathy, His sympathy, the story of Lazarus, and how that's something that I don't know if I could do if I knew that I was about to fix the situation, if I was about to raise Lazarus from the dead. I don't know if I could have that same kind of compassion and empathy as Christ did in that situation. And it makes me kind of reconsider what sympathy and empathy and that compassionate response actually is. That it's not situational necessarily, but very relational, very connected to what someone is going through
in the moment.
Yeah, in the moment, right.
We oftentimes look towards the end goal.
Yeah.
But Jesus experienced in the moment how people were feeling, and He empathized with them, and not being totally taken up with the end goal that was going to accomplish.
Well, he was the one person on earth entitled to the holier than thou persona, and He didn't take it. He was willing to meet and sympathize with them, and I just think it's incredible, especially to go back over these stories. At least the way I've always thought about it, the 5 loaves, 2 fish thing. It's always been a childlike story to me because of how I originally learned it growing up. You learn what Jesus did with it, but to break it down almost for me from an adult perspective of okay, well, what about the bread? What about these guys? What about all this whole mass of people dealing with this situation? There's a reality there that is worth revisiting these stories. And so I think it's timely.
Yeah, I think, again, if Jesus had never, if those people would have gone away hungry, he still would have been the bread of life.
Right.
He's not obligated.
Right. Well, he didn't feed every crowd.
That's right.
He came into
He
contact
didn't heal
with.
every
Right.
leper or every person.
Yeah.
And I think, again, if we start becoming, I think another takeaway is there can be a default thinking in our, maybe it's an American mindset that is, it's a demandingness. And so we demand of God. If you think about it, that's kind of what religion. Religion is kind of a demand. It's a, if I do everything right in raising my kids, they're going to turn out right. Or if I'm doing all these religious duties right, God is obligated to bless me. And in a sense, what I'm saying is I'm demanding God. You're the puppet, and I'm pulling the strings here, God. And if I do these things right, and that's what religion is. Yeah. And our faith is a faith of relationship. And again, it's seeing who God is, who Christ is, and enjoying him for who he is.
Right.
The Westminster Confession of Faith, the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever.
Right.
And we lose out on that because we're all focused on the one loaf. And,
Right.
and if we're focused on the one loaf, we'll never enjoy life.
Yeah.
And we'll never enjoy our God.
Right.
That's good. It reminds me of one of John Piper's kind of quips from his website there. I think it's God is most glorified in us when we are most satisfied in him. If he is what we're seeking after and what is fulfilling us, because he's constant and because he's always there, we can rest in that. We can find everything from joy and exhilaration just as much as we can find rest and comfort. And I think, speaking to what you just said, Mark, we don't like to be surprised. Nobody likes to be caught off guard by what God is doing. So when it's an unforeseen circumstance or a situation that in reality all that's doing is showing God's sovereignty, we don't like to hand over that power. I don't think we like to. You can't fully submit to God's authority if your hands are holding on to something. And so often, at least for me, I know it's easy for me to clutch something else as I pursue Christ. And that's a healthy reminder.
Yeah. And I think even more, what we're talking about is even more true post-cross and post-resurrection than what it was in the disciples' time, just because of the gravity of what Christ has experienced on our behalf, and that Hebrews passage is even more true. And I mean, when it was written, it was true. But in this context, that Christ knows our suffering. He knows what we're going through. He's been through the gambit of birth to death, and can now sympathize with us in our weaknesses and in our troubles. And
I mean, Jesus knew what it was like to live with a single loaf.
Yeah.
And he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he even cried out, if possible, remove this cup, but not my will, thy will be done.
Right.
And he goes to the cross, and that's the message of the gospel.
Yeah.
I think it was C.S. Lewis who said, I've got it written down here, God whispers to us in our pleasures, he speaks in our conscience, but he shouts in our pain. It's the megaphone to arouse a deaf world. And if I may, I'm just going to read. He continues with that quote, and I think it's very powerful. He says, I am progressing along the path of life in my... Is that okay to read these?
Oh, please do.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, hey, it's your
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Love C.S. Lewis.
Yeah, I love C.S. Lewis. He said, I am progressing along the path of life in my ordinary, contentedly fallen and godless condition, absorbed in a merry meeting with my friends for the morrow, or a bit of work that tickles my vanity today, a holiday or a new book, when suddenly a stab of abdominal pain threatens serious disease, or a headline in the newspapers threatens us all with destruction and sends this whole pack of cards tumbling down. At first I'm overwhelmed, and all my little happinesses, like little broken toys, are like little broken toys. And then, slowly and reluctantly, bit by bit, I try to bring myself into the frame of mind that I should be at all times. I remind myself that all these toys were never intended to possess my heart, that my true good is in another world, and my only real reassure is Christ. And perhaps by God's grace, I succeed. For a day or two, I become a creature consciously dependent on God and drawing strength from the right sources. But the moment the threat is withdrawn, my whole nature lapses back to the toys, to the loaves, to what I want. And I think all of this is so very, very instructive. Christ is saying, look to me. See me in this. The compassionate, loving God. Look, preach yourself the gospel again. See me in life. And as the old hymn says, if we do that, the things of this world can grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. That's where we need to be.
Yeah. Makes me wonder how many days were in between the feeding of the 5,000, the feeding of the 4. Like, I wonder how, it's not very specific, but I mean, it literally could be a couple days, and that could be true of their response. Yeah. And
Well, and that's one thing that I'm almost getting more and more fed up with, is this argument that the Bible's outdated or it's not relevant to me, or those stories are great and cool, but as far as my personal application, it's got to be something else. No, like this stuff has increased its relevance since then for you because of how Jesus hopefully has already moved in your life. I think it speaks to what you said, Ashton, just about after the cross, and after our moment of belief of that, what is this sanctification walk going to look like? How are we going to remind ourselves that we're called to be optimistic in a time that doesn't make a whole lot of sense? I think we preach ourselves the gospel daily so we can make sense of faith. And then one thing Mark said, at least during the Saturday service, was faith has a certain amount of ridiculousness to it. And it's true, because if you're doing it right and Christ is moving through you, it's hard to understand sometimes. You have a joy that you can't fully explain. You have a peace that doesn't quite make a lot of sense, but you feel the presence of Christ all the more. And I think that's good. So pivoting then into almost a church life response for our listeners and how we can apply the sermon. Hopefully you guys are able to listen to it this weekend. You can find it online if not. But what is our single loaf that renders us faithless and troubled? And that's a personal question for you to answer. But guys, what do you think that tends to be nowadays, or at least maybe in your own experience, if not humanity as a whole?
My single loaf.
It's loaded. It's a loaded question.
I mean, do you want something specific, or do you, I mean,
it's not my favorite Thanksgiving side, so I'm not too worried about it. But.
Yeah, anything that causes us to look towards ourselves,
sure,
and get our eyes off of Christ. It could be, again, something so mundane in life, a missed red light or a missed green light, and you're stuck at a red light. A forgotten appointment can be something so mundane. It could be things that might even be good, but it causes the focus of your heart to be on what I'm entitled to, or what I want, or what I'm not getting, or I'm not being heard, or I was slighted, or this, and it's the me or I comments instead of seeing Christ do that. This is who you are. There are 1,000 things in any given day that can do that. I think another question that we have to wrestle with is, so how can I keep my eyes off the loaf? What are the disciplines? Discipline ourselves for the purpose of godliness. What are the things that I need to build into my life on a daily basis, so that I'm ever growing in my understanding that when my toys are broken, I'm not crying over that. I'm focusing on Him.
Yeah,
that's good. You almost want to create a routine to become aware of Christ, not aware of what Christ has given you, because that's going to be a tool that I think the devil uses to distract, and then that idea of getting demanding for that, I think is cool.
I think for me, as far as like developing in disciplines, we have so many resources and tools at our disposal. Sometimes I find myself, when I'm just doing stuff around the house or working, or, I'll put on YouTube or I'll put on Netflix or something to just kind of, almost distract me from. But
Sure.
I think that there are times where I need to pull something that's more spiritual, more encouraging into those moments. Sometimes it's hard because I don't want to, I don't actually want to listen to it. But if in those moments there's an opportunity for me to think on something that is good and holy, and to be reminded of truth, regardless of what it is, I think that's something that I need to do more often.
I think we're all plagued with a certain type of spiritual ADHD.
Yeah.
We are so easily
right.
distracted, and Paul tells us about praying without ceasing, and that lifestyle of, as we're going through a day, developing the discipline of a conversation with God that says, right. Lord, help me to see you in this situation. Okay, Lord, I'm going through this, or just this morning early, some text messages I got about prayer, some needs people were having. And so you go to prayer right then, right. But you say, Lord, bring those things back to my remembrance during the day.
Right. Sometimes we can think about it as like, oh, we need to spend a certain amount of time in prayer. We need to set aside time, and sometimes that's important to do. But it really is more of a constant
state
conversation,
of mind,
state of mind, continual connection. Lord, what are you doing in this moment?
Yep.
Help me to see, help me to know and to be wise with what I've been given in this situation, whatever, just this constant. It's not always just spend an hour on your knees in prayer.
Right.
That's good, but that's not. Sometimes we restrict it to that moment rather than a constant.
And God is so faithful, because the moment we trust Christ as our Savior, His Spirit indwells us, and His Spirit is the grand prompter towards Jesus. And I think in His kindness, He throughout the day will do those promptings, and I think we have to respond to that in faith. But we have to develop those attentive spiritual ears to hear that. But God is always prompting us throughout the day.
Yeah.
Look to me. Here I am, and it's this ongoing conversation. It's the dance of life as we are being led by the Spirit. We follow His lead on these things, but it's something that we have to develop it.
I think the same thing can be said about our times in the Word too. I mean, the times in the Word we should have those intentional moments where we're reading and we're ingesting truth and things, but those times are really for the rest of your day, so that when you're going throughout your day, you're reciting those truths. And we have apps on our phone that will literally, you can push play and the Bible will be read to you out loud. We're not at a place where we have to sit and read for hours and hours and hours each day. It's good if you do, but this is an opportunity for us to use technology. We talked about this a couple years last year in our Synced campaign. But utilizing the technology that we have to help us grow in our relationship with God, and
set yourself an alert or a reminder that'll ding at 10:10 this morning that says, "Hi, Mark. This is God. I'm still here." It's our choice.
Yeah.
We can either live today or the rest of our life as experiencing one loaf living, or enjoy the bounty of the bread of life in a relationship. And it's a choice. Every one of us have to make that choice. Do we want one loaf living, or do you want to experience the bread of life today?
Yeah.
When I just think about the way people consume music, it's always there. You can listen to it in the car. You can hum a tune at your desk, whatever that looks like. You're not devoting an intentional time to go sit in your favorite chair and listen to a song or two, and considering that that was my morning, or that was my music devotional for the day. It's a part of your life.
Yeah.
It's ingrained into what you do. And one thing that has impressed me, at least in terms of youth, is their ability to know lyrics to songs, but they struggle to memorize one verse of the Bible. I think it's a habit that can flip a posture towards consuming the Bible in a way that the Word can meet you in your life.
Yeah.
To make it personal, instead of you trying to go meet your Bible wherever it happens to sit in your home. I think that's good. One final thing before we do an outro here. It's mentioned in the passage, Mark, and it's easy to overlook, but Christ gives thanks for the bread as they share it. And so thankfulness being tied to compassion, I think that's a huge thing. I wanted to talk briefly about why do we think that is. Because you read it over and you don't really think about it, but like, is he going to say, thanks me for the bread? Here you go. But he still devotes time to thankfulness and that posture of optimism, I think, that can come from that. So why is thankfulness tied to compassion, do you think?
Well, it's a good question.
Yeah.
Christ is he's modeling for us this conscious, prayerful mentality. I mean, he's going to his Father. Because he knew as he was living his life here on earth, having set aside his divine power and privileges, he's living every moment dependent upon the Father's resources. Yeah. He was so in tune, just what we were talking about. If there's anyone who did not define one loaf living, it was Jesus. And so when you are free of your own self-centered focus, as Jesus was, you respond in compassion because you see the needs of others. Right. He's not a one loaf liver, Jesus. And so when you're free of yourself, you see others and you see the Father. It's like what he said elsewhere. The whole law can be summed in this one point: love God, and when you love God, you come with a thankful heart to Him, and love others, and that's when you move towards sympathy and empathy towards others. You see their need. Jesus lived the life of abundance, and those two fit. You're focused on God. You'll always be thankful when you look to Him, and you'll always see the needs of others and move with grace and compassion. One loaf livers, they're going to be focused on themselves, which never results in thankfulness. And it'll never result in helping someone else in need.
Right. That's good.
That was great.
Ashton, what can we point people towards before we get out of here? Oh, I was going to ask you. Christmas Eve service information, is that coming out later? Is there
it should be up. It's on .life.
Okay. I think it has its own page.
fbcva.life/Christmas.
Okay. Cool.
But those service times are 11, 5, and 7. At the 11 o'clock and the 5 o'clock services, we have nursery and preschool. So, young families, my family's going to be coming to the 11 o'clock probably, pre-nap time, get in our Christmas Eve service, kids down for nap. It's going to be great. But I encourage you guys. It's going to be a great, a lot of music, really special, kind of a different, a lot of special music based on the Andrew Peterson concerts. And awesome. Should be good.
Cool. Black Friday is this week, you guys. Are you going to go out, Mark, and wait outside a store at midnight and shop for Lisa? Why not?
If I was a one loaf liver, I would. But I have an abundance.
That's true. I
do not need to experience Black Friday. And I have an Amazon account, and I can just
Okay. Well, there you go. Are you online shopping?
That's Cyber Monday. That is where it's at.
There you go.
I know.
Yeah.
And deals are always happening. Where are you at in your Christmas shopping? You got a bunch to do? Not even close to started? Because everyone I've talked to is like, "Oh yeah, I'm almost done."
Yeah,
like,
we're going simple. We're thinking about it, but
okay.
I think we're gonna get something for Heavenly and Shepherd together.
Good.
So haven't considered what to get for Sarah yet, but
yes, you have.
Yeah,
you know you have. You're not. She's not. Yeah. You're not leaving her to the last moment.
We're gonna sell our house and we're gonna get out of debt. That's what I'm gonna give her. Yeah.
There you go. Good. Well, 'tis the season, guys. The fact of the matter is that sermons are not meant to just take an hour, but rather transform a lifetime. Until next week, much love and God bless.